Okay, we'll go right into the submissions and welcome Glen Koorey this morning. How are you, Glen? Nice to see you. So you have 5 minutes.
Yes. Right. Tēnā koutou. Atamarie, ko Glen aho. I'm Glen Koorey. I'm a transportation engineering researcher. I specialise particularly in sustainable transport and road safety, particular interest in active mode travel and speed management. You've probably read my submission already. Know that I wholeheartedly support what we are doing here. This photo here is actually just down the end of my street, one of the recent 30 school zones. Really pleased to see that, and pleased to see, in fact, my street's going to be a 30 school zone as well coming up. I just wanted today to add some additional safety evidence. You've heard some already from the staff about the safety implications of this, so I just wanted to talk about a few other things. So I guess one of the questions is whether lower speeds have worked before. We've got lots of overseas evidence. We do already do before and after crash analyses here in New Zealand and Christchurch as well. Some of you may be familiar with the Central City 30k zone that was analysed a few years ago compared with the rest of the Central City. Still showing some really good reductions in crashes and injuries. But the argument could be made, well, these are largely suburban areas that you're talking about today, so what about in your suburban areas? So I took the opportunity to have a look at 3 recent suburban lower speed areas. So Addington, Sumner and Papanui, all a few years ago they were introduced, so enough time to see what's happening already. And because of course we've had a few crazy things like COVID and lockdowns and so forth, I used a nearby control area to sort of compare and see what we would expect to happen as well. So for example, if the control crashes or injuries went up, then we'd probably expect the crashes and injuries to go up in the speed side as well. If it went down, you'd expect them to go down as well. So same with Addington West, that was done back in 2018. So that was sort of the area to the west of Selwyn Street there. 40k zone was introduced. So I looked at the zone to the east of Selwyn Street as a comparison site there. Got some crash data to before and after the change that happened there. And when we look at the difference between what we'd have expected to have seen in terms of crashes and injuries and what actually happened, we saw some really good reductions. So 69% reduction in crashes and 88% reduction in injuries compared to what we'd expect based on the control area there. So that's pretty promising.
It's massive.
Sumner, that was introduced back in 2019 there, mixture of 40 and some 30k zones. So I went around the bay to Redcliffs as sort of the control area for that one, which hasn't changed. Again, pretty good results, 12% down on crashes, but definitely a big jump down in injuries there, 56% reduction in those. Similar story in Papanui. So the streets around the Northlands Mall area got introduced to 30k's a while ago. Sissons Drive used to be 40k's beforehand, everything else was 50, so that's all gone down to 30. So I looked at the other area to the west of that, sort of around Langdons Road and the streets there, which is still 50. Again, not a big drop in crashes, about 9% on crashes, but again, injuries, a really big reduction there, 44%. So that's pretty promising. So just some remarks on this. If you looked closely at the numbers, you would have seen they're not big numbers, 1 or 2 crashes or injuries a year. So for each area, they're not necessarily big, but collectively, if we're talking about the whole city, then we start taking a big difference. And you are doing a big chunk of the city, so you're going to make a big difference there. You would have noticed too that the biggest savings when injuries reduce. All right, and that's really down to, even if we don't reduce the crashes, they become less severe crashes as well, and that's pretty important. There's some concern I've seen about people won't comply strictly with the new limits. They won't do 30k's and so forth. That's actually not the critical key here. It's really whether people are going slower than they were before. And you will see some speed reduction. That evidence is seen around the world and the country. So you'll get some reductions in speed and you get the safer outcomes from that, like we saw in those areas there. Okay, and of course this is just one reason. Safety is a big reason, but there's a whole bunch of other reasons that I know your staff and others have alluded to that we've got to keep reminding ourselves why we're doing these things. And that's me. Happy to take any questions in the time available.
Probably got time for one. We've got 36 seconds. Yanni, just quickly.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was just a question of clarification on the graph. Yep. What are you comparing the percentage reduction to for the control area? I didn't get what the orange box in the middle is.
So the orange box in the middle is what would have happened to the area that did get its speed changed if the crash patterns were the same as what happened in the control area. So if the crashes in the control area went up between the before and after, then you'd expect the crashes in the speed limit area to have gone up as well if nothing else had changed. So the fact they went down is telling us the speed limit's doing something. Basically, that's sort of a standard way we analyse crash safety.
Great. Thanks very much for doing all the work on this, Glenn. It's really helpful. Thanks for coming
Very
in.
welcome.